9-1-800.
We live in an age where the chance of...
Sounds incredibly complex. It sounds like students, you need to have abilities that span. I'm really geeking out here. You really have this incredible ability to explain, complex ideas, whether they're in biology, whether they're engineering, how they apply to modern practice. And that's, one of the things that engineers are often criticized for is we don't do a very good job of communicating to the general public what we do, why we do it, and so on. And I know that that's a passion of yours, in addition to the science, is to try to have engineers, scientists do a much better job of communicating what it is they do, because it's incredibly important and exciting to attract young people to science and engineering. Can you say a little bit about, how your interest in engineering evolved, and then how you're so passionate about making sure the public knows what engineers do?
I do really like telling the story behind the work. We have the journal articles where we'll publish the technical aspects of the work, but a lot of times, what I remember is the same kind of story that I'm going to tell my kids, and I'll tell my grandkids of, who are the people behind this story, and what were the challenges, and why was it difficult? And I just really enjoy that process. And one of the reasons that I continue doing it is because it's actually helped my research quite a bit as well. And that's something a lot of maybe scientists and engineers don't know. For example, when we first started studying this urination, we published this article in National Geographic, and this lawyer from New York City sent us an email and gave us a correction in the article. He said that he used to work in zoos when he was a kid, and he said, well, elephants actually have a slightly smaller bladder for their body size than according to these evolutionary trends, so you should make this correction in your paper. And there's no way I could have gotten in touch with this guy unless I had put this out in National Geographic. So he actually influenced our paper so that we actually, when we published the final article in Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, that it was correct. So, and that's just one example of when you reach out to the public, there's a huge number of people out there that are kind of these like citizen scientists that they give feedback, and it's like having a million eyes that kind of like help you at once. And it's just, I think it's it's also just fun. It's fun to get to know them, and they know there's just a huge amount, especially about biology and about nature, that the general public knows about. And I really try to use them as experts too.
As you were talking about the properties of this kind of ant raft, I was trying to envision the tools that you use to really get this incredibly detailed information. You said you use high-speed cameras. What can you say a little bit, from a technical standpoint, what are the kind of tools of the trade for someone who does what you do?
The nice thing about being an engineer or a scientist, we get to play with really cool devices. The thing that you want to use to study ants is this thing called a rheometer. Now, this rheometer it looks like a little merry-go-round, except it costs like $60,000. It's like more than the price of my car, way more. And this rheometer was invented by chemical engineers who wanted to basically engineer food products. For example, M&Ms, they melt in your mouth but not in your hand. Yogurt has this what they call mouth feel. All these products have been engineered by adding different additives to make them taste a different way. And what this rheometer does, it has these two spinning plates, and what it does is it can actually measure the properties of the materials really precisely. And so we are the first ones to actually put sort of living organisms in this rheometer, but we basically treated them as this, alien substance that we kind of wanted to reverse engineer.
I see. So just, again, using regular tools of the trade that that engineers use. Like I said, you take the animals, or in this case insects, as just another thing that you want to test. So it's totally normal.
Yeah,
from
that's normal.
From an engineer standpoint.
In our lab, we borrow the rheometer there. There's in their lab they have these 2 rheometers. One of them they call the clean rheometer, and my rheometer is the dirty rheometer because we'll put feces and ants in it, and we have to have this vacuum cleaner around in case the ants escape. We make special engineering tools a little bit grosser. There's this animal that we're studying called the star-nosed mole. No one's ever heard of it, but it's this mole that can actually sniff underwater with basically our nose. So if you go scuba diving, you can't actually smell underwater. All you smell is that sort of disgusting rubbery mask that you put on. And that's because there's an air-water barrier, and we can't penetrate that. But a few of these small rodents, like the mole, they've actually evolved a way to blow bubbles underwater and inhale those bubbles back in to its own nose. And so it's basically sort of hacked this system and made its ability to basically smell underwater. And it uses this to sort of catch worms. It's almost completely blind.
That's what I was going to say. Why does this mole need to smell underwater? And you're saying it uniquely adapted because it's a better worm hunter than maybe others.
Yeah, that's right. It basically has to completely rely on the sense of smell to go in an environment where its nose wouldn't normally work. And so it exhales and inhales these bubbles. We think we're using our grommet, our device that we use on air, and we want to put it underwater. And the great thing about this is that we would actually be able to give a whole new regime to sort of above water sensors. Because right now, there's no solution for sensors underwater. I was at Auburn a few weeks ago and looked at their aquaculture tanks. The raising of fish is a huge rising industry, but there's no permanent way to actually sense things underwater because of algae, bacteria. The closest device they have is this brush that periodically goes over your sensor underwater, but eventually the brush gets clogged. So we can basically take advantage of this, this star-nosed mole, and we can build this sensor that basically never actually has to touch water, but can actually smell underwater. I think that would be a pretty big deal.
No, I mean, again, as you were talking, I'm thinking like, why in the world do we need to, smell things underwater? But that's probably because we've never been able to do it. And if in fact we're able to develop the systems or the sensors that might develop from that, it's really quite something.
Yeah.
Really.